And neither of us had known we were going to the same place, and we just saw each other. We exploded. We just roared with laughter. I don't know what the staff thought, but it seemed so ludicrous. But it was the thin end of a wedge. Men began to get their hair much longer. Women began to cut it shorter, the Grace Jones look. Men began to wear earrings and jewelry and carry handbags. Women began to wear jeans and jackboots. There was confusion. It reached the point where one vicar finished a wedding service by saying, "I now pronounce you to be husband and wife and leave you to find out the difference." That was the beginning of a confusion between male and female, which has accelerated ever since. And now we do not know where we are. I believe behind it was not just a social trend. I believe Satan, whose other name is Apollyon, the destroyer, and who can't create anything, so finds his joy in destroying what God has created. He is the original vandal. I believe Satan is destroying male and female, quite deliberately, because God put chivalry and romance. Chivalry has now been labeled chauvinism. I've been rebuked for letting a lady go through the door first. And our whole sense of values about gender has been distorted. Now, let me say straight away about the trend we call feminism, that there is a legitimate complaint behind it, that women have been treated as second-class citizens and of unequal value to men. That is the right complaint, and we need to hear it as men, because we've all been guilty of it in some way or another. However, the solution proposed is the wrong solution. And that is to obliterate all differences, call us all persons, and to become politically correct. Politically correct is far from being biblically correct. And there is an increasing tension here. There are Christians who are more concerned about being politically correct than morally correct. Well, let me trace this development over the last few years. 60s, the age of unisex. 70s, the age of homosex. Came out of the closet. It was now legal. And what becomes legal becomes all right. That's a very important principle, that when anything is recognized legally, it is accepted by the population as right. That has implications for legalizing drugs and legalizing prostitution and many other political causes. Anyway, homosexuality came out of the closet. I remember at one meeting, and you will never know who this is, a young man came up to me and he said, "David, can you help me? I hate myself." And I looked at him, handsome, well-dressed, well-spoken, obviously well-educated, good job in the City of London, everything a young man could ask for. And I said, "Yet you hate yourself." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because every spare minute I have in London, I walk the streets looking for a man to have sex with. And I'm just disgusted with myself." I said, "Are you a Christian?" He said, "Yes, I am. Or I try to be." And he certainly believed in the Lord. I said, "When did this start?" He said, "At school, at boarding school." Now, I know what goes on at boys' boarding schools. Would never send a boy of mine to a boarding school, but never mind. I said to him, "No, it didn't start then. It started years before that, in your home, in your family." He said, "I don't think so." I said, "Tell me about your parents." He said, "What do you want to know?" I said, "Who was boss? Your dad or your mum?" "Oh," he said, "Mum." In fact, he said she'd already ditched 2 husbands before she married my father. And she bossed him. I said, tell me, when you fell down and hurt yourself, who did you run to for comfort? He said, Dad. I said, did your dad hug you and kiss you? Yes. I said, that's good. Dad should. But I said, did your mum? Never. I said, one more question. I said, did you ever climb into bed with your dad? Yes, many times. And I said, and what happened to him? And suddenly it all came out. His dad was not having good relations with his mum. And when the boy got into bed, he got sexually excited, and you can guess the rest. I could have wept for that boy. And I found in so many cases that a man whose sexuality is confused, invariably you will find that dad was not the father, the head of the house. Mum was, if there was a dad at all. And so the boy grows up with confused emotions, treating his dad as a mum and his mum as a dad, or not having a dad at all, and the poor mum is trying to be dad as well as mum. And we are reaping a harvest today of all this, which will go on and get worse and worse, until men are true fathers, heads of their house, and leading their wives and families, not dictating to them, but leading them. We're going to have an increase in this perversion. And the Bible does call it that. It is an abomination to God. He never intended. He didn't build our bodies for it. The back passage is too delicate to be used for that. But that's what's happening. I was a gunner in the Royal Navy, was the next remark. I could see by the hands. Came out of the Navy, went home, couldn't stand life at home with the wife and kids, ran away from home to London, got into bad company, got into kinky sex, began to dress as a woman, finally had the operation, penis removed and hormone treatment, and was now a woman. And still got so depressed that this person went to the Thames embankment to throw themselves in the river. And there is an evangelist who goes walking up and down the embankment, stopping suicides and giving them gospel tracts. And stopped this person, gave them a tract, made them say the sinner's prayer, and then said, now I'll give you a name and address of someone who will help you, and gave my name and address. And they arrived. This was actually back in the 70s, early 70s, but it was the first time I'd had a pastoral situation like that. Looked at all my books on counseling, not one of them mentioned this. Thought of all my training at Cambridge, they never came within a million miles of telling me how to handle this. It took 6 months to get that person straight. I had to say, you must not go back to your wife and children. That's just going to confuse them further. To find a job for them was almost impossible. I went round employer after employer, begging them to take this person on. But when they found out that here was a person using women's toilets with a man's mind and memory, they didn't want to know. And finally, I got a Christian employer to take them on. Gradually and slowly but surely. Have you ever thought about how to help a person to realize who they are in Christ when they've already had an irreversible sex change? Think about it. How do they discover what God intended them to be? That was the first, but I'm afraid it was far from the last. I'm told there are now 25,000 such people in England. That's the population of a small town. You can get it free on the National Health Service, and they've even done a series of TV programs on how to do it. I was talking to a couple at a cocktail party in London. I said, what are your jobs? And the man said, I'm a surgeon, my wife's a psychologist. I said, oh, you look after body and soul, as a kind of joke, you know. They said, that's just what we do. We have our own private clinic. And I said, what kind of people come there? Oh, people who want to change sex. And he said, I change their bodies and my wife changes their minds. I said, do you have many customers? We've got a waiting list of hundreds. We're living in a funny world.